It's a real honor for me to be here today, and I'm deeply appreciative to the Economic Times for the invite. You know, I'm honored for the opportunity to speak to you today, to share my thoughts and my excitement on the development of the Indian economy, its integration with the increasingly digital economy. You know, as an auditor, and in the interests of transparency, I should start by making a short declaration. India is a country that I hold in the highest regard. I've visited many, many times over the years, and I have a deep, deep affection for the country. As a Canadian, and this is obviously the Canadian portion of the segment, as a Canadian and having led KPMG Canada for over a decade before taking on my current role, I know firsthand about the strength and the vitality of the relationships between our people, as well as the bilateral trade and governmental relationships between our two countries. And India is deeply important to KPMG. The KPMG India celebrates its 25th anniversary this year. It's an exceptional practice, and in Arun Kumar, the firm has one of our most senior and most experienced global leaders. Our Indian firm, like so many other Indian businesses, is increasingly acting as a global hub for technology and innovation across the KPMG network. A great example of India taking a leading role in my own business is the fact that our global head of cybersecurity is Indian and based in Delhi. And I'm immensely proud of the work that my colleagues in India are involved with, in the public as well as the private sector here. We've been working with many Indian states to help them create a path towards creating universal health coverage. And I sincerely hope that we can play a constructive role in helping India deliver on the new National Health Protection Scheme announced in the budget at the beginning of this month. You know, these major improvements to healthcare in India are exciting and a vital step as the country fulfills its economic potential. But having said that I have a deep affection for India, I will still endeavor to bring the objectivity to my comments that you would rightly expect. About a month ago, almost to the day, I was fortunate enough to be in Davos to hear Prime Minister Modi speak at the World Economic Forum. And it was truly an historic occasion. And I'll tell you that his speech, it sent a very powerful message to CEOs from around the world, as well as to political leaders from many, many nations. Prime Minister Modi, he spoke passionately in Davos about the benefits nationally and internationally of globalization. And I can tell you that his speech, it very much set the tone for so many of the discussions that I had in Davos with CEOs from our major clients around the world. And the Prime Minister's comments, they struck a chord that echoed throughout the week. The Prime Minister rightly expressed the concern that globalization is losing its luster. You know, as a result of more inward-looking and insular policies, and I actually agree with him that the downside risks of such isolationism are no less significant than climate change and terrorism. Globalization has enabled huge progress throughout the world, reducing poverty, growing the middle class, opening up new opportunities through greater trade and spreading innovation. Indeed, India has been a beneficiary of globalization since its economic reform process started 25 years ago. But what we've also experienced, and a big part of the discussion in Davos, was that globalization is far from perfect. Growth has not always been inclusive, and widening inequality is a justifiable cause for concern. But the answer is in making globalization more inclusive, making it work better in a fairer way for more people. There are a number of things that can help do this, and they're the things that I know are very much top of mind here in India. In his speech, Prime Minister Modi also made a powerful case that India is open for business, saying that the red tape that used to stymie business in India is being replaced by a red carpet, welcoming enterprise. And that comment really struck. It struck home not just because it was the right message for global leaders, but because those of us who visit India and do business here, we know that the reality is on the way to matching the rhetoric. And to an extent, that message about India transforming into a much more pro-market, pro-business environment should not, indeed did not, come as a huge surprise. FDI is at all-time record levels. The overhaul of India's corporate law and business environment is delivering noticeable improvements. India's dramatic rise up the World Bank's ease of doing business league table is capturing headlines and certainly the attention of the CEOs that I have the privilege of speaking with. Indian economic reforms have been delivering and developing momentum and credibility with international business, certainly over recent years. But for all of you who've been there, Davos is one of those few places, those few moments in the year when the world listens. And it's possible to capture global attention, to reset the dial on expectations. Prime Minister Modi's speech did just that for India. I compared it in numerous media interviews and in client conversations that I've had since with the speech that President Xi gave in Davos last year. Both President Xi, Prime Minister Modi, had an electrifying effect on all of us in the hall and a profound impact on those watching outside. So I'd like to spend a few minutes that I have today on, giving you my thoughts on India's economic reforms and why I believe that India's economic success matters so much, not only for India, but for the wider world. And the great news is that the economy is starting to respond to the landmark reforms that have been made. The Indian economy is now projected to grow 7.4% in 2018 by the IMF, and for India once again to become the world's fastest growing major economy. I'll start with my own firm, KPMG, which survives and thrives by serving other businesses. We're in many ways a barometer for broader economic health and broader progress. Over the 25 years since KPMG was founded, we've grown significantly. For most of the last decade, we've posted double-digit growth, and we now have over 20,000 people working here, serving several thousand Indian businesses. But while those headline numbers have been strong, the reality is that our clients and our own business have struggled to reach their full potential. We face levels of complexity, levels of bureaucracy that have hampered India's economic progress. And I'll highlight just three aspects: tax, infrastructure, and the digital economy. First, tax. Complex federal and state regulations and tax regimes, they've created friction and inefficiency within the economy. And that friction has been a drag on Indian economic growth. Outdated and poor infrastructure has been another historic overhang and a drag on growth. In many ways, India's infrastructure challenge has been the physical manifestation of the complex web of national and state responsibilities. Moving people and goods in India was simply too difficult, and the limitations of the transport network has certainly and undoubtedly slowed the pace. The 2018 budget calls for a massive increase in infrastructure investment, and the need will just get greater. It's estimated that the infrastructure needs and require investment of $4.5 trillion by 2040. With projected spending of $3.9 trillion, there's a potential $500 million opportunity that still exists there. And finally, the digital economy. In this digital age, this historic fragmentation and lack of alignment between the national and state governments has slowed India's vital investment in the digital infrastructure that will enable much of the next phase of India's economic development. So what are the solutions? The government's commitment to minimum government and maximum governance certainly is significant. Creating a simpler, unified national tax regime in the form of the GST has been a vital step forward. And I will tell you that some global business leaders were skeptical as to whether or not India could follow through on the GST. But India has delivered the biggest tax reform in the country's history, and in fact, one of the largest such reforms the world has ever seen. The importance of making India one country, one market, eliminating multiple layers of complexity, taxation, and cost, that cannot be underestimated, and it's certainly the benefits will be felt not just in the tax take, but also in the stimulus that this reform provides to the underlying economy in the years to come. It reduces uncertainty for international business and has the double benefit of reducing compliance costs for business in the long run and improving the tax take for government. The huge investments being made in India's ports and transport infrastructure are also paying dividends. Opening up investment in India's road building program to FDI, it sends a powerful message to the international business community and certainly accelerates the development of the quality of the road network needed for India to reach its economic ambitions. And the combined effects of a progressive liberalization of the telco sector and the support for India's homegrown digital enterprises means that the government's stated ambition of a US $1 trillion digital economy, that's realistic. All of these reforms would be important at any stage of India's economic development. But I believe that the fact that India is liberalizing its economy and liberating its entrepreneurial spirit at this point in time, I think is of incredible importance. And I say that because I believe the next few years, the first decade of the fourth industrial revolution, that will be the most transformational since the 19th century and the seismic global upheaval that we saw as a result of the first industrial revolution. Every economy, every sector, and every business, as Dominic said, is being transformed by technology. We're witnessing convergence, disruption, and the creation of whole new sectors at a pace that we've never seen before. And India is well placed to prosper in this digital revolution. India has a young population, a growing middle class, a tradition of science, technology, and engineering excellence, combined with a thirst for digital innovation. Every business leader that I speak with shares my view that India has an incredibly deep pool of technology talent. And Indian CEOs are ambitious and they're forward-looking. Each year we conduct an in-depth survey with over 1,300 CEOs from around the world to learn about their strategic challenges and their ambitions. And these CEOs, they lead some of the world's largest, most complex, and most successful businesses. And we spoke to over 130 Indian CEOs, and the results are very striking. Indian CEOs are embracing that disruption. They're seizing the opportunities that it offers. They're making bold investments in technology and people to drive the next stage of their growth. And they're more open to new alliances and collaboration to find complementary skills and geographic footprints. And Indian CEOs are also disrupting themselves. They're actively learning new skills to equip them and their business to succeed in the new era. So put simply, India has the right conditions and the right ambition to truly become a global economic powerhouse. Digitizing the Indian economy will not only improve the efficiency of doing business, but it will help bring more of the Indian economy within the ambit of the tax authorities as well. But one strand of the current reform agenda frankly excites me more than the others, and as an accountant, it is in tax reform. Startup India and the ambition to nurture Indian technology businesses to stand and succeed on the world stage, that's tremendously exciting. With Indian technology talent supported by the digital infrastructure and a pro-startup business environment open to foreign VC investment, there's a real chance for the birth and the growth of a true Indian tech giant. We all know that progress is never linear. And for each tech unicorn, there are numerous failures. And if we learn anything from the success in Silicon Valley, it has to be that there's a willingness to recognize the rate of failure in tech startups is higher than any other traditional business, and certainly beyond what our traditional risk appetite would comfortably accept. But the scale of the tech startups in India, the tech talent available, and the growing investment pool certainly gives me confidence that India is very capable of developing a true tech giant in the next few years. You know, India's growth rate of 7% this year will be the envy of just about every other major economy. But I also recognize that it might not satisfy every stakeholder in India. In a country this large, this complex, and this diverse, you know, I doubt that any reform agenda could ever meet that benchmark of universal acclaim. But India has started down a path, a bold and an optimistic path. It signaled a determination to build a strong economy that works within and contributes to the global economic framework. And that determination and the progress being made towards India's ambitions is recognized by the business and political leaders that I meet wherever I travel all over the world. The Indian economic reforms that we witness are bold and transformative, and this is truly a paradigm shift. The rest of the world is rightly having to reevaluate India and to recalibrate for an India that's ready to take its seat at the top table for global business. I'm hugely excited by what I see in front of me and determined that KPMG will do every single thing that we can do to support making India as successful as every one of us in this room want it to be.